I'm Hugh Hewitt from Studio West. Chairman Mike Gallagher joins me, chairman of the new House Select Committee on China. I'm going to have to call him Chairman Gallagher now. That really bothers me because he's a Packers fan. But Chairman Gallagher, welcome. Congratulations. We've been talking about this for months. Can you tell us what we need to know about the Gallagher Committee, the China Committee, the Select Committee? I played your floor speech already, so I played that in the first hour. What's important for the audience to know about the new committee?
I think the big takeaway from the floor proceedings yesterday was the fact that we got an overwhelming bipartisan vote of support for the committee. It was 365 to 65. So means most of the Democrats actually voted for it. I think listening to the floor debate, you saw a lot of Democrats that even those who were somewhat concerned that this would somehow go off the rails ultimately came down in favor. They expressed recognition of the threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party, particularly sort of the economic component of the threat is what Democrats like Ro Khanna tend to get motivated by. So I think that's a great starting point for the committee. Speaker McCarthy, you saw in his comments, very much was sincere in wanting this to be a bipartisan effort and said a few things that I think are noteworthy. One, that the era of wishful thinking on China is over, and that certain things are obvious, such as the fact that ESG benefits the CCP. So that's an indication that we are going to have a very, let's say at times difficult, but hopefully productive conversation with the financial community about how we prevent ourselves from subsidizing communist genocide and China's military modernization. So all things considered, it was a fantastic start to the committee's existence, and to have that overwhelming expression of bipartisan support from Congress, I think is important because that reduces the ability of the CCP to drive a wedge in Congress. And I would say for my Democratic colleagues who voted no, many of them expressed a concern that somehow the committee's work would intensify or fuel sort of anti-Asian American rhetoric. I think that's completely unfounded. I think that's just an excuse to oppose, a Republican effort. And part of what we did on the floor last night, myself and all my Republican colleagues, and even some of the Democrats recognized it, like Ro Khanna in his speech, is to remind people that we edited the name of the committee so that it says Chinese Communist Party because we are concerned about the threat posed by the party. We have no quarrel with the Chinese people. The Chinese people are the primary victims of the CCP's oppression and repression, and we must remind people of that basic distinction at every turn. So a great start to the committee yesterday.
I was glad to hear that in your floor speech. I know that you've made that point repeatedly. This has nothing to do with Chinese Americans. It has a lot to do with the agents of the Chinese Communist Party, and they are numerous in the United States. The espionage threat is real. In fact, yesterday I got my advanced copy of Mike Pompeo's new book, Never Give an Inch, and it starts off by hammering on China, pointing out to the reset that occurred under the Trump years in our recognition. This morning in news items by John Ellis, the Chinese Foreign Ministry announced yet another saber rattling about Taiwan and attacking. I think it was an attack on the Gallagher Committee, but I'll leave that to you to read. I would like to know some specifics. How many members will it have? Do you know? Who is going to be the ranking minority member, and what members are you certain are going to be on the committee with you?
There will be 9 Republicans and 7 Democrats, so a smaller committee analogous to the size of the Intel Committee, a little bit smaller than that, actually. I actually think that is an asset. It makes us more nimble. It makes us our ability to respond to things quickly, more obvious and easier. As for the specific membership of the committee, starting with the ranking member on the other side, I don't know. That'll be for Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, to decide entirely. I do know this. We have a lot of Democrats with serious national security street cred that have asked me about it and have said they've asked Hakeem Jeffries to be considered for ranking member. So I'm cautiously optimistic that the ranking member will be someone of substance, not only with the right temperament, but with the right background to bring to bear on these issues. And that'll make our work, again, more bipartisan. So that's a good thing, in my opinion. But we'll see. That's entirely up to the Democrats to choose. And I spoke with Hakeem Jeffries on the floor yesterday, and I just reiterated the fact that, I'm not going to use this to score cheap shots. This is about putting America in a position where we can win this new Cold War and we can deter World War III in the near term, where we can enhance our deterrent posture. So my hope is they'll participate. On our side, similarly, Kevin McCarthy will make the decision. I'm submitting a list of recommended members, but it's ultimately up to the speaker. He's got to balance a lot of things. I will say this, Hugh, we have a lot of really talented members. We have freshmen that I think that could hit the ground sprinting on this issue because of their military background. People like John James, Morgan Luttrell. We have people that, because of their experience and where they represent, like the new representative from Guam, that I think would have a phenomenal perspective that we need to leverage, whether they're on the committee or not. Young Kim, Michelle Steele, people like that. So I'm very excited about the group of members we're going to have on our side. Just sort of and I know that Kevin McCarthy is only going to put serious people on the committee. So we don't have the membership yet. That's the next step. In some ways, that's the most important step, but I'm hoping to have that resolved either by the end of this week or early next week so we can really get to work.
Now, Chairman Gallagher, the Democrats are mad at Speaker McCarthy because he has announced his intention to remove from the Intelligence Committee Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff. Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff, yes, and Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee. It is my earnest hope Hakeem Jeffries does not, for political points, appoint any of those three to the committee, that he stays serious from the beginning. But I know there's a red line there. Any worry on your part that Hakeem Jeffries will try and score a political point by putting people on that McCarthy just has to immediately remove?
I really hope not. Based on my conversations with my Democratic colleagues now, I don't think so. But, it's the House of Representatives. Things could always get a little bit crazy. So I just hope they avoid that temptation. And it would really, we'll proceed regardless on the Republican side. And it might create a little bit of theatrics and hearings, but it won't meaningfully impair our work. I think it would really undercut the ranking member on the Democratic side. If they have to deal with, a sort of a super woke, progressive, crazy, it's gonna make them look unserious. That would be unfortunate, in my opinion. So I really hope they don't go down that road. As for Swalwell, there are serious security concerns with respect to his position on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Everyone's aware of that. I'm sure you've talked about that on your show. So we're not dealing with that from a perspective of politics. We're dealing with it from a perspective of what's best for American national security. And so again, I hope we can avoid the political point scoring, and I hope it doesn't affect the Select Committee on China's work.
Now, Chairman Gallagher, does the committee have subpoena power?
It was not specified in the rule, but we're working through the logistics in terms of what the overall rule, what it means for the select committees. I don't anticipate it being a problem at all. The worst case scenario is when we do joint hearings, we can subpoena that way. But right now, in talking with the leadership staff, I don't think it's going to be a hurdle that we can't overcome.
Now, in terms of getting cooperation on the espionage side, you've got to get the executives from Meta, the executives from Google, the executives from all of the large social media companies in to talk to you about TikTok and other issues, including penetration of their own organization by agents of the Chinese Communist Party. Do you anticipate anticipation from big tech on this committee?
Well, I'm sure some big tech executives are not eager to talk to the committee. But the approach I'm taking now is one of, okay, I want to give you an opportunity to explain your position. I come in with certain pre-existing biases. If you want to make a counter argument, that's fine. But we're going to do it out in the open for the American people to see. And if you refuse to comply with that discussion and my honest desire to have that discussion, I think ultimately that's going to be a bad look for your company, and I think you're going to invite more scrutiny from Congress than there already is. The fact is, big tech has to confront the growing suspicion about their allegiances, the growing suspicion about their practices, the perception that there's a complete lack of transparency. And it's not just my committee that would have an interest in that. It's going to be Jim Jordan's committee that has an interest in that, particularly when it comes to the perceived collusion between certain big tech companies and the Biden administration. So they ignore those questions. They ignore our request to testify at their own peril. And just look at what's happened in TikTok TikTok in the last 2 months. There's been a sea change in Congress in terms of recognizing the threat posed by TikTok. We had a overwhelmingly bipartisan vote in favor of banning TikTok on government devices. I have a bill for the broader ban that has Democratic support. Mark Warner is talking about the threat posed by TikTok in the Senate. So if you hesitate, if you prevaricate, you're going to invite more congressional scrutiny and opposition. So I hope that that doesn't happen. I also want to give an opportunity for the tech companies that are out there that I know have a more patriotic view right now, or at least still think of themselves as American companies and recognize how essential they are to us winning this long-term competition with China. I want to give them an opportunity to talk about how we win, right? We cannot win this unless we have American companies that are out innovating their Chinese counterparts and indeed think of themselves as Americans. So I don't think we'll have any problems getting, big tech to comply. If they do, it's just going to be very problematic for them.
Two final questions, Congressman, and we have 2 minutes for them. I would like to see the two entities most visibly compromised by China. That would be the Walt Disney Corporation in the form of Bob Iger and the NBA in the form of Commissioner Silver. I would like Iger and Silver before your committee to answer questions. And is that possible? That's my first question. Do you expect those two to be early witnesses as emblematic of what the CCP has done to American organizations dependent on their market?
Yes, I do. So, consider this me giving them the initial warning order that they'll have to testify before the committee. I'd be even willing to go out when it comes to Hollywood or Disney. I'd be willing to go out and sit down with them where they are, engage with them in a discussion. But we want to have a discussion in front of the American people. I think it drives the American people crazy when they see the NBA bending the knee to Xi Jinping. It really drives them crazy. And also, the bigger concern is that it gives us a preview of what's going to happen to the rest of our domestic industries if we allow the Chinese Communist Party to control the commanding heights of technology and the economy. They will be able to blackmail the entire world. They will be able to coerce the entire world. That's not just isolated to the greedy executives in Hollywood or the NBA. That's a preview of things to come if we do not change course with a sense of urgency.
So Bob Iger and Adam Silver will be before the Gallagher Committee. Less than 30 seconds. Yesterday, the CNO made remarks that our industrial base only supports the production of 1.2 submarines a year. Is that on your agenda, or is that on HASC's agenda, or both agendas? 30 seconds, Congressman.
HASC will be in the lead. I intend to provide supporting fires. I'll also be a subcommittee chair on HASC. Obviously, I'm passionate about sea power. Mostly, that's a workforce constraint right now, but we haven't gotten the demand signal right. Because we haven't had a coherent shipbuilding plan, industry can't plan. They can't make long-term plans if they get this 2 steps forward, 3 step back approach from the Navy. So we need to get the demand signal right so we can satisfy our own needs as well as capitalize on AUKUS.
Chairman Gallagher, keep coming back. Congratulations. The Gallagher Committee matters.
Thank you.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I hate fake news. Right now, a few members of the left-wing legacy media are trying to push the story that GOP Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel has not locked up the RNC. That's not true. She has locked up re-election as the RNC Chairwoman. I'm very glad that it has happened. It's a matter of math. There are only 168 votes, and I think you've got more than 3/4 of them locked up, Chairwoman. Welcome back. Would you confirm that for me? How many do you have locked up tight?
Yeah, I have over 100 locked up tight, public putting their names out there. There's more that have not put their names out there because my opponent's putting a maximum pressure campaign on them. But, the members who know us best and know me best and understand what the RNC does are pleased and understand that we're already in a presidential election and that this isn't the time to rebuild and start everything from scratch. And they also are looking at the positive race that I'm running about unity and bringing our party together to victory. And they're seeing the opposite from my opponent.
Look, I've got nothing against Harmeet. I just don't like media that are pretending this is a contest. This is not a contest. You have won. There's a formality ahead. When does the actual vote occur? Which state does it occur on, Chairwoman McDaniel?
It happens on January 27th in California, but I'm going to still work for every vote, Hugh. I'm going to make sure I don't want to take anything for granted. I'm talking to members every day about my vision going forward. But I have vast support, and those names are out public. and nobody's moving.
It would truly be a disaster to switch horses in the middle of a rising tide. We have won the House. Speaker McCarthy, I don't know if Speaker McCarthy is coming to the RNC, but congrats and props to you and the RNC for getting us to a majority. There were red thunderstorms, but no red wave, and we just got to keep building. If you just keep doing every 2 years what you've done the last two cycles, I'll be happy. We'll have like no Democrats in 10 years. That would be good.
Thank you. And I do think, we're heading towards a great 2024. The Senate map was not great for us in 2022. It will be great for us in 2024. And people who understand what the RNC does, listen, we don't pick the candidates. We don't do the messaging for the candidates. But we do the voter registration. That's already happening. We are reaching out to Hispanic, Asian, and Black voters. This has never happened with the RNC. That's already happening. Under my tenure, we've started election integrity with poll watchers and poll workers being recruited with 100% coverage across the country, which we had this election. That's already happening. You can't tear down the infrastructure before an election and then think it's just going to be there. This is something that started right after this election and has to continue through 2024.
So I just want to tell my audience, if you see a story that says there's drama in the re-election of Ronna McDaniel, that's fake news. There is no drama. It's done. I really do resent people who come in because they got to write a story. I just rebuked my friend Henry Gomez because he was trying to say, oh, there's a new resolution out. And they're just, so what? There are a couple of parties, state parties, that don't like you for a variety of reasons, none of them having to do with you. They don't like the fact of X, Y, or Z, and they want more money or more staff. Or I don't know why they're mad at you, but they don't have the votes. They're not even close to having the votes. You've got this locked up. It's all fake news that you don't. Now I want to ask you about serious stuff, real news.
Sure. Yeah.
Katie Porter announced yesterday she is running for that's a threat. She threatened to, and now she's going to run for Senate in California. Almost certainly a Democrat will win that race, and it will probably be two Democrats against each other. So I'm not here to talk about who the Republicans ought to run. I'm here to talk about Scott Baugh announced immediately that he's going to renew his effort, which almost won, against a new Democrat who will probably be a left-wing lunatic like Katie Porter is, but only more. What do you think about that? Katie Porter just turned her back on the voters that are elected her less than 2 months ago.
Yeah, I thought I was campaigning with Scott Baugh. I mean, he's such a great candidate in the Orange County area. And when I saw that she announced, just after getting elected, it showed what her true ambition was. I hope the voters see through her. I mean, she is not a nice person. Anybody looking at her text exchanges with her staff and others, and she's a phony. But Scott Baugh is a great candidate, and I think that means that that's another House seat that we can pick up in California. We picked up Duarte this cycle. We picked up 4 in 2020. And I think Scott Baugh's on his way to being a congressman. We've obviously got to do the work, but he would be a great pickup for the Republican Party.
Now, Chairwoman McDaniel will also get new congressional maps in at least Ohio and North Carolina. Yep. Their Supreme Court's flipped. How many seats do you think are going to be now competitive that are currently held by Democrats in those two states that otherwise were not?
A lot of people don't know the RNC heavily invested in those Supreme Court races because we knew if we flipped Ohio and we flipped North Carolina, that the maps were undecided from the 2020 census. So I think Ohio, you could get 2 to 3. It's going to, there's going to be lawsuits then to go back to the Supreme Court, which we flipped. And then I think North Carolina, you could get 3. We should have had 3 more this cycle. So that would be, I think those would go Republican, and that would add to Kevin McCarthy's majority. But these were intentional investments. I worked with the state party chair in Ohio and the state party chair in North Carolina specifically to flip those Supreme Court races, and we did.
Yeah, the stuff you never see. Mike Pompeo and Chris Christie co-chaired on something that Ronna got going called the GOP Redistricting Trust, and it was successful in Ohio and North Carolina, but it takes 2 years to bear fruit. That's another reason Ronna's going to win. But the question is, so maybe maximum of 6 advantage at the start from the majority. Have you already identified the target Democrats?
I have not. I know we have. The team has. I'm not as familiar with all of it, but it's going to be a total redraw. I mean, remember, North Carolina did this right when Trump took office. The Supreme Court came in and redrew the whole state, and we lost about 3 seats. Republicans did. So I think we're going to see a similar movement this cycle, but there's definitely room to pick up seats in all of those, both of those states.
Now, in the other 48, there are very close races that we won that need to be defended, and there are very close races that we lost that need to be challenged. On the latter, do you have a list already of the most vulnerable Democrats who are currently sitting in the House of Representatives in the other 48 states, not including Ohio and North Carolina, because those maps aren't moving?
Yeah, I certainly think Washington 3 and Washington 8 are potential pickups in that state. I think Michigan 3 is a pickup. I mean, there's a lot of seats that were close for us. If we get the right candidate, we're going to win those seats back. And the map's even broader than that. And then we've got to defend. You know, we're always going to have to defend some of these tight seats. But I think we can expand our majority in the House in 2024, especially when we're coming into a presidential year where there's higher turnout and we have a good candidate. You know, our process has already started. Our debates will probably start in July of this year. That's already beginning right now. And so this is a critical time for Republicans. And this is my admonishment, Hugh. If you look at some of the aftermath of these midterms, Republicans lost races because other Republicans didn't vote for them.
Yes.
We can't be so vitriolic and so hateful towards each other because, one, we turn off other Republicans, but two, nobody wants to be part of a party where they're always fighting each other, when they're always attacking each other. And so I think of Reagan all the time right now. We need to embody the 11th commandment. We need to unify. We need to put forward a positive vision for the future of this country because what Biden's doing is disastrous. And all this infighting in our party is never going to help us. And if you look race by race, we had split tickets in almost every battleground state. That means one Republican attracted Republicans and independents and Democrats, and one didn't. And the winning recipe is addition, not subtraction, and that's what I'm running on.
Now, Stephen Daines, senator from Montana, is in charge of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. He is out busy recruiting in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in Montana, in West Virginia, in Nevada, all pickups. And there might be others out there. You're out busy helping. Arizona, absolutely. Yep. Arizona. And so we need very strong candidates. But you just mentioned the debates. So, I keep lobbying to start them in May. I guess I'm not winning. But I hope that you get small dollar donor involvement. You get people involved in that because they're very exciting debates that are going to happen. And I want to talk to you about the border, and I want to talk to you about the ask. The debt limit is coming up. I've talked about it with a couple of people already this morning. I talked to Tom Cotton about it yesterday. Republicans can focus on one thing in exchange for raising the debt limit. Jim Geraghty just suggested to me it's the repeal of the 87,000 IRS agents. I have been pushing for finishing the wall and doubling the Border Patrol. I don't know what it is, but do you think we'll be able to get together and frame the demand on the debt limit raise, Ronna McDaniel, so that it's coherent, consistent, repeated endlessly?
Yes, I think we will. And I think we have to hold the line. And I was just at the border. I went over to McAllen when Biden did his fake visit over in El Paso. He went for 2 hours. Shame on him. It's 2 years too late. But talking to these Border Patrol families or friends of theirs saying there's a high suicide rate. They do not have the resources. They can't talk about it because of retribution. I was next to a huge gap in the wall. People who lived in that community were talking about, severed heads, kids who are being human trafficked, the horrific things that are happening at our border. There is nothing humanitarian about what's happening under the Biden administration at our southern border. Republicans have to hold the line, and we have to take our case to the American people as to why we cannot budge until these things are fixed.
So it's really just sequencing. You get one thing with the debt limit, you get one thing with the government shutdown or the threat of thereof in the fall. And I think we've just talked about the two of them, the 87,000 IRS agents in the border, the staging of them. I don't know when they get together and begin to message on this. When the RNC gets together in 2 weeks, I hope I see you. By the way, I'm out in California for the duration. But when you get together, how much is mechanics? I mean, they got to reelect you, but how much is mechanics and how much is strategery on messaging?
So a lot of it's going to be mechanics, but I also think strategery on messaging is going to be key. I love that word. Listen, I've assembled a Future of the Republican Party group, and I think part of what the aftermath of 2022 is Democrats spent $30 million on abortion and the Dobbs decision and a lot of these races, and a lot of our candidates just said we're not going to address it. And you can't ignore $30 million being spent against you, saying you won't give life-saving care to a woman who's having a miscarriage or who has an ectopic pregnancy. So we have to be strong on messaging, and we've got to push back. And I do agree with you, Hugh. It can't be 5 things. It's got to be coherent, quick, two things. The border, I think, right now is a big issue because it embodies the disaster of the Biden administration, security, safety, the drug crisis, human trafficking. So much is at stake with our southern border.
And so much depends on the debates. And you've been working on this. I want to tell people, Ronna McDaniel and Dave Bossie have been working on this for a year and a half. Am I correct? You know what we need to do, which is to present our candidates the opportunity to speak directly to the American people without legacy media blocking and tackling for the Democrats, which we've run into before. You confident you got a good package coming up?
We do. We're actually meeting today, Hugh. The debate committee is going to talk today, and I'll be with Dave Bossie tomorrow. We're going to be doing some debate meetings in New York, and we're forging ahead. And we've put out some RFP processes, and then we'll unveil the criteria for the debate stage, probably debate by debate for the candidates, so they know what they have to the benchmark.
Okay, when you sit down with Dave, just say, Hewitt says more and faster, more and faster, more and that's my messaging, more and faster. Okay. But whatever you come up with, it will be well thought out, well executed, because the RNC is running very well under Ronna McDaniel and will continue to do so for the next 2 years. Chairwoman McDaniel, thank you. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Morning glory, America. Bonjour. Hi, candidate Hugh Hewitt, live from Studio West. I love the feel of making news in the morning. Chairman Mike Gallagher of the new Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party just told me minutes ago that he will be requiring the appearance and testimony of Disney CEO Bob Iger, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, and big tech executives because all of those present problems that are fundamental to our relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. To discuss that, I'm joined by Jim Geraghty. He is, of course, the author of The Morning Jolt over at National Review, a Washington Post columnist occasionally. You see Jim's columns over there. Jim, what do you make of whether or not Iger and Silver will say yes? I don't think they dare say no or resist those requests to appear.
Well, no doubt. It'll look bad if they say no. I suppose at some point, if you're Robert Iger or you're Commissioner Stern, you're like, well, I'm bigger than Congress. I don't need to do that. I run an institution that's bigger and more important than the U.S. government. I don't have time for this penny ante stuff of, are we helping a terrible government? Are we helping enable genocide? Look, I've got a Marvel universe to run. I've got LeBron to keep happy. I've got it, it'll look bad. It wouldn't stun me if they did it, but I think they'll probably go there and then offer happy talk blather.
Yeah, they will be there, and then they're going to be asked. And it's Adam Silver, not David Stern. David Stern's dead, right. Jim. I hate to bring this news to your thing, but you're a Jets fan and you're in mourning. Yeah, you're a Jets fan. You're in mourning. You can't process information this early. Of the two committees, the Gallagher Committee and the Jordan Committee, what are your hopes and what are your fears for both of them?
It will probably not come as a big surprise to your listeners and viewers, Hugh, that I'd really like to look into how the COVID pandemic started. Remember that? There was this whole thing that kind of disrupted our lives for the better part of a year and couldn't leave our houses and we couldn't celebrate birthdays and go on vacations and see our elderly relative. It was kind of a big deal, right? And everybody's like, yeah, but, it must have been somebody had bat soup. Oh, well, it happens. Never mind that we've never had, we've had soup. Contagious pandemics before, H1N1, SARS, MERS, things like that. But none of them required the entire world to halt and stop to the point where, like, seismologists are telling us they're hearing sounds in the earth they'd never heard before because human activity had been so widely and completely stopped. That's kind of a big deal. And I'd like to know how this happened. And as your listeners and readers and viewers probably know, I spent a lot of time looking at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and boy, there's a big stack of I'm going to say coincidence. I'm going to say a big stack of circumstantial evidence pointing to the possibility of not having not one but two institutions researching the kind of viruses found in bats, coronaviruses. The idea that somebody in that process ended up making some sort of mistake that ended up somebody in the lab getting infected. They go out, kiss their wives, cough on somebody, go on the subway, go out into the world and end up setting off a pandemic. I don't buy into that.
Now, Jim,
yeah,
there are three places that can go.
Investigation of that.
That can go to the Gallagher Committee, then go to the Jordan Committee, That can go to the House Oversight Committee of James. I don't want it to go to 3 committees. I want those questions asked of Dr. Fauci, the people who applied for the gain of function research grants, the people that gave them. I want Dr. Fauci to testify why he told me on this show there were no gain of function grants. I've got that on tape. But where do you want it done? Because if the Republicans all hold hearings, we'll have no hearings.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. If there's a member on one committee who really wants to do it and isn't on the right committee, I'd be perfectly fine with committee members holding like trades and saying, look, I know you're not, on this committee, you're on committee A, but not committee B. Come on to committee A for a week and be part of those hearings. I also don't want to see grandstanding. And I think the jury is still out on whether House Republicans learned what you're supposed to do with with an oversight hearing. You're not supposed to use it for fundraising. You're not supposed to rail at the witness for 5 minutes and then not get. There's supposed to be, you with your legal experience would know, exercises in learning what's actually happened. Right? This is your one opportunity.
Interesting. I got this book yesterday, Mike Pompeo's new memoir, Never Give an Inch. Do you know why he got appointed to the CIA and eventually the state? Because he was responsible on the Benghazi committee. That's why. And if you are responsible, it's because you're asking witnesses real questions for which substantive answers are given back. So I'm hopeful with you. Now, this is a key question. And I know I'm catching you cold on this, but your initial thoughts. The Republicans are told, I read Ellis items every morning. And it says that we're going to actually run up against the debt limit fairly soon. January, we begin to have to take, quote, extraordinary measures, and that by summer, they're going to raise it or we're going to default. I believe they ought to make their demand. We're not going to raise the debt limit until we close the border. And phrase it, we're not going to open up spending until we shut down migration. But I don't know what the ask is. Do you think there needs to be a concise, precise ask that is repeated 1,000 times? And if so, what will it be? And do the Republicans, led by Speaker McCarthy and Leader McConnell, have the capacity to actually message on that?
I think that'd be an excellent strategy, Hugh. And if the border was their number one choice, great. How about those 87,000 IRS agents? It's the first thing they passed, first thing they did in the House. And they were told, it'll never get past the Senate. It'll never, Biden issued a veto threat if it ever got to his desk. Well, with the House, with the debt limit, we have leverage. With the debt limit, we all need to give up something we'd like to have in order to, Republicans don't like to see the debt limit go up higher. But it's going to have to happen because we don't want it to fall. So we're willing to give you guys that increase in the debt limit. But President Biden, you don't get those 87,000 new IRS agents you wanted. That's
Jim, that's pretty brilliant, and that solves the cotton problem. Tom's not a problem, but the senator was on yesterday. He said traditionally debt limit has to do with income and outflow, and there's no place better than an IRS reform that includes the repeal of the IRS agents and a demand that they modernize their technology and make it easier to file and quicker to collect.
Yeah, stuff like that. Because here's the thing: as much as you'd like to say secure the border. Well, how many border agents do you need to make it secure? Who defines secure? How many encounters at the southwest border per month are a reasonable number? All that stuff can get kind of vague and kind of fuzzy. I think any improvement is still good news. I would welcome it and I'd accept it, and I'd prefer, half a loaf to getting nothing. But the 87,000, the fact that this went first, I think is pretty significant. Something in border security, something in domestic energy production. Those have been the big 3 things that Kevin McCarthy was talking about before.
Yeah, but you got to agree on one. To me, the essence of messaging is we want X. We will raise the debt limit by $5 trillion or $2 trillion as soon as we get X. And then the American people know the Democrats are holding on to 87,000 IRS agents and risking the default of the United States currency. Really? And boy, do they lose that argument. Now, the question is capacity to frame. I think Speaker McCarthy has a pretty good message machine. Do you?
Yeah. Compared to everybody else in the Republican Party right now. Maybe you could say somebody like DeSantis has a better one, but he's down in Florida, and so it's not not his role to be leading this sort of thing. I don't know if there's anybody on Capitol Hill who has a better or more effective system than McCarthy has right now. I think there's a philosophy in negotiation, largely wholeheartedly endorsed by our former president, that you should always ask for more than you're ever going to get, and then it brinksmanship, and eventually then you come down. And I see that philosophy. I see the logic of it. But if you go a little bit less than the other side expected, if they attempt to deny it, then they look kind of ridiculous. The Democrats could say, well, we're not going to give you blumpity blump for securing the border or something like that. But if hey, you have to cancel your plan for 87,000 new IRS agents, and that's all it takes to raise the debt limit another $5 trillion. That's really reasonable. That's really not asking too much. It's not even saying to Biden, you have to give up something you already have. It means you cannot get something you thought you were going to get. But hey, you know what? You lost the House in the midterms. We now have leverage. This is what we want. I think that might be a very easy messaging. Now, I can see some conservatives saying you're not asking enough. But I think all in all, the more you can force them into looking unreasonable, the more likely you are to get what you want.
That is, to me, the essence. That's why I'm persuadable on this. That's why I actually hadn't thought about the 87,000 IRS agents. That might be a better ask, because the deal is framing the ask. And you might say, we want A, B, and C and settle for A. So what is A? Get rid of the appropriation for 87,000 IRS agents. Jim, you've actually contributed to the public discourse this morning. For a Jets fan in morning, that's pretty good. I think we need a first...
How did things go in those final minutes of week 3? Okay, just checking.
I'm glad that happened, because we pick in the draft before you pick in the draft as a consequence.
Oh, that's going to make a huge difference. Okay.
Huge difference. We're going to get someone you wanted. Actually, that might be wrong, because I think in the second round they made flip positions. So actually we gave away our first round choice to Houston. So the Texans are happy that you won that game. Jim Geraghty, follow him on Twitter at Jim Geraghty. Get the Morning Jolt at National Review. Read him in the Washington Post when his column appears, and come right back. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by Politico's Olivia Beavers. She covers Congress. Good morning, Olivia. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me back on.
Chairman Gallagher of the Gallagher Committee just joined me and just told me that among the first witnesses will be Bob Iger of Disney and Adam Silver of the NBA. Was that known to you? Is that news to you?
That's new to me. I was trying to figure out what some of the priorities were going to be for this new committee, and that certainly is one of them. So you just broke some news on your show today.
Well, he just said, let the word go forth, Mr. Iger and Mr. Silver, you're coming to testify before the Gallagher Committee. He told me it's going to be 9 Republicans, 7 Democrats. Do we have any idea who Hakeem Jeffries is going to appoint?
No, I'm not sure. I think that you are going to see Democrats who are sort of, wanting to be pushing back against China and have concerns about China, and there are definitely Democrats who do. That's why you saw more than, I think, 145 vote to set up the select committee. But at least from Republicans, I am starting to sort of get a sense of who those members might be, too. I think you can look at sort of the cross sections of those who might be on the House Intelligence Committee. I've heard, names like Young Kim and then Michelle Steele, who I know Mr. Gallagher brought up. I've heard Juan Ciscomani and, some other sort of members of the Republican Party that are serious. They're going to be strong in terms of going after and questioning witnesses, but also they really want good communicators. And that's something that you and I have talked about before.
Yeah, I have served with Congresswoman Steele on a committee in Orange County for many, many years. And I know Congresswoman Kim from Orange County as well. She represents the Nixon Libraries District. They're both very talented. Do you got any names, though, specifically floating around on the crossovers between the other committees and the Gallagher Committee? On the Republican side?
Not a ton. I did write down, let me see, I have a little list of, names that I had, but I don't have it. Some of the names I also heard might be Dan Crenshaw. We've talked about Mike Waltz, and we've also talked about Maria Salazar and Andy Barr are some of the names that I've also sort of been hearing in the ethers of this.
How about the Jordan Committee? Because the Jordan Committee, which is into the weaponization of the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and Homeland Security, any names there for the Republican or the Democrat side? Yet that one's much more contentious with the Democrats.
Definitely much more contentious. That was a party line vote, so no Democrats were voting to support it. But at least on the Republican side, I think this is going to be much more combative. So you're probably going to be seeing Democrats be putting up people who are going to be pushing back against the Republicans in ways that we sort of saw a couple years back when FISA was being investigated by House Republicans. But some of the names I've been hearing, Thomas Massie, I believe, told Tucker Carlson that he would be on the committee. I don't know if everything is locked down, but there was sort of this auditioning that you saw happening the other day when he was going back with Democrats and defending why they needed to be investigating politicization of the FBI. What I've been told is you should look at people who are strong questioners on judiciary, who are lawyers, and they're going to be able to really do a strong cross-examination. But I also think, and Hugh, I know you were following this closely, we might be seeing some of the names of those Republicans who were initially holding out against McCarthy, who might end up being on this committee. And I don't know if that's sort of an agreement that was made, but the names like Dan Bishop have been floated, Chip Roy is interested, and also more rank and file members who are McCarthy allies like Kelly Armstrong. But there is certainly, I think, a ton of interest in this committee because they know that they're going to be front and center. And
the Gallagher Committee and the Jordan Committee are going to get more ink than everybody else combined. And I know you've got the beat. Have you divided up the beat at Politico, or are you going to get both the Jordan Committee and the Gallagher Committee?
I will be sort of teaming up with a colleague who is in charge broadly of Republican investigations. So she's going to be taking the lead on that, and I will be supporting her with my sources in the House and the House Republican sort of angle. So we're sort of double teaming it.
Now, of the two, probably partisans care more about the Jordan Committee. I care more about the Gallagher Committee. I really do. I will follow it intensely. Do you think it will generate intense interest given the tension between the CCP and the U.S.?
You know, I imagine that it will, but I think also some of that comes down to the members, right? There's a certain element of showmanship that comes with working on the committees. You have to have hearings that people will want to tune into. It will have to be creating news or be able to inform the people watching, whether it's the media, whether it's just regular, rather regular people. And so it will be coming down to how they communicate. And that was something that I think, we watched a little bit with the January 6th committee. I know, Republicans really pushed back on that, but they focused a lot on how to communicate to people. And that was something that they prioritized. So,
well, I think I will be watching Bob Iger and Adam Silver opening gavel to closing gavel. And I won't you be there in the audience those days, Olivia Beavers?
I'm hoping to be there some days. I will have to fight my colleague to see who gets a seat, but I'll be doing some push-ups to see if I can push her out of the way.
Olivia Beavers from Politico. Just get into her calendar and start screwing around with it. The CCP can give you tips on that. Olivia Beavers from Politico, always a pleasure. Follow Olivia on Twitter. Watch her on every news station because she's really, really good at what she does. Thank you, Olivia Beavers.